good game. I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
This week on the show, we traverse a mythical landscape aided only by our wits in an epic, emotional, and exhausting journey. I am, of course, talking about South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Come on, fight! I dodged that.
Also this week, we traverse a mythical landscape aided only by our wits in an epic, emotional, and exhausting journey. I'm, of course, talking about Dark Souls 2.
Plants vs. Zombies makes a mess of your backyard in Garden Warfare, and I speak with Pete Hines, one of the inner circle at Bethesda.
But before all that, can you name the game?
All right, Bajo, you up for a spot of gardening?
Let's get into it. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare is a big change for the series. Shifting the game's old top-down tower defense roots to go third person has given PopCap the room to create a really vibrant new look. But does the decision to turn this into a multiplayer-only online shooter overlook all that masterful strategy we love from the original games?
Well, let's put that to the side for the moment and have a look what we do get with Garden Warfare. The default game mode is a 12-on-12 team deathmatch with the plants squaring off against the zombies to be the first to 50 points. I was surprised to see that only 4 of the plants were selectable though.
Yeah, with the old games, you pretty much needed an almanac to keep track of them all. But when I dug in with this, I realized that these plants are more of a hybrid of some of those original types. I spent most of my time with the cactus. He's a sniper class, but he can also make use of 3 other plants. Walnuts can be dropped to create cover where you need it. Potato mines make for ideal ambushes. And then there's his garlic drone.
I think they did a really good job of making each of the classes look and feel really distinct. The sunflower just looks adorable and acts as the medic, topping teammates up with healing sunbeams. Then the chomper is just frightening.
Yeah, they can be a pain, but they're easy to exploit with the right characters. I'd switch to an engineer zombie whenever a chomper was griefing me. Their concrete guns pack a big punch, and when they're riding their jackhammer, the chompers can't even bite them. I was glad to see for every plant yin, there's a zombie yang.
Yeah, and I was surprised at how much they wove proper teamwork into so much of this game. I mean, everyone can revive a fallen teammate, not just a medic. And you're encouraged to do it because reviving someone takes a point off the opposing team.
This is a really team-focused game, which is great when you have a good team, but it's a nightmare when everyone's off doing their own thing. And it's especially frustrating in the Gardens and Graveyards mode, which is essentially King of the Hill. I got the sense that nobody really knew what they were meant to be doing. Guys, I'm trying to build a teleporter. We won't get far without it. Can I get some help, guys? I just wish they had more modes where it was every man for himself, or maybe a single-player campaign. That would have helped.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true, but that Gardens and Graveyards mode was actually my favourite. There's such a feeling of achievement after you've been able to capture each spot and push the plants back across the map. And then the final act lets you fly to a whole new island for the showdown with a giant sunflower.
I just wish there was more of that strategy we love from the old games. The closest this game comes to its tower defense roots is with Garden Ops. This is a 4-player co-op mode where you defend a garden against waves of zombies. And this is where you see some clever nods to the original games, like being able to pick which plants you put in the pots. I just didn't see much strategy in there, and I thought that would have had more depth in these modes.
Well, I think you're being a little bit harsh on it. I mean, they've made this game a team-based shooter, so you can't criticise it for not being more of a tower defense game.
Yeah, maybe, but I just don't know who this game is for, because I think shooter fans will want something a bit more meaty, and I think fans of the original games will want a lot more strategy and depth to it. I do feel like this is aimed at a younger audience, which is fine, but it's also rated M, so kids can't even play it. Overall though, my real issue is that I just think it's too light on modes for a multiplayer-only shooter, so I'm giving it 6 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It is a bit strange that they've made a game that fits into the M category, because it then feels like they're cutting out the audience that it's aimed at. But then, you know, that said, I think they've put a lot of work into balancing the classes so that they're all really unique and fun to play, so I'm giving it 7.5. Now, here's Goose with the news.
Thanks, guys. Grand Theft Auto developer Rockstar Games has been awarded with a British Academy of Film and Television Arts Fellowship. The BAFTA Fellowship is considered to be the highest accolade the Academy bestows, and marks the first time a studio rather than an individual has been awarded the honour. Rockstar joins previous Fellowship members from the gaming industry, including Peter Molyneux, Shigeru Miyamoto, Gabe Newell and Will Wright. Nintendo have made plans to shut down their Wi-Fi connection service for more than 400 Wii and DS games by May 20th. Features like online play, leaderboards, and downloadable content will no longer work in the games affected, including Mario Kart DS and Call of Duty Black Ops. Nintendo have stated that the shutdown will allow them to shift focus towards Wii U and 3DS matchmaking services. And in lighter news, tens of thousands of gamers have recently participated in a collective playthrough dubbed Twitch Plays Pokemon. The event featured a special live stream of Pokemon Red, in which players could use a chat feature on the service Twitch to send commands to the game. Players overcame endless trolling and many trying incidents, such as navigating a small ledge, as well as creating their own religion along the way. After just over 2 weeks, the collective effort succeeded in beating the game. Twitch Plays Pokemon will now continue with a playthrough of Pokemon Crystal. And that's all the news for this week. All praise the Helix fossil.
Thanks, Goose. All right, Bajo, are you ready for the Dark Souls review?
It's hard to describe to non-Souls players or outsiders just why these games are so compelling. There's an unspoken bond that unites Souls players. It's a bond that's born from pain, from death, but most importantly, from conquest. They share memories of what is truly a long, tough journey across an unforgiving land. Dark Souls 2 is the third game in this notoriously difficult series. Demon's Souls started it, Dark Souls set the bar, and Dark Souls 2 refines it. You start your journey with no quests, no goals, and no idea what you're supposed to be doing. Instantly, the stillness of this new world sets the tone. As you see fellow travelers, ghostly shadows, and bloodstains, you can't help but feel lost in a helpless purgatory. Like you don't matter at all, like no one in this world really does.
A great king built a great kingdom. One day, you will stand before its decrepit gate without really knowing why.
The core progression hasn't changed much. You explore, level up, find and reinforce gear until you're tough enough to get through to the next area. Fights are tough, and even basic enemies will pose a challenge. One tiny lapse in concentration and it can all be over, sending you back to the bonfire, risking every soul you earned along the way. You're subtly pulled through this game by untraveled forks in the road, blocked paths that you know one day you'll be able to reach, and shiny loot that's just out of your grasp. The best part about this game is that there are just so many enemies to work through, each with their own speed, strengths, armor types, debuffs, and attack patterns. I can't think of another game that comes close to this level of complexity in this kind of combat. Each encounter feels carefully thought out to challenge you in new ways. It really is a large-scale gauntlet of a game. Character customization has had a complete overhaul. Now you can make your hero look like an Oompa Loompa if you wish. And I did wish. And then you put a helmet on them to never see their face again.
Be gone.
There's more NPCs to meet along the way now.
Young undead.
If it would not trouble you, could you visit my abode just down the way?
And their morbid stories of exhaustion and helplessness just add to the tone.
You must forge on to bring an end to your journey and mine.
But it's not the NPCs that tell the story in Dark Souls 2. It's more of a gut feeling. It's story told without words, painted by the walls and the creatures around you. For example, you may wander into some deep underground cavern only to find pirates and strange creatures that like the shadows. And then when you finally do reach the boss, everything you've witnessed and explored starts to make some sense without ever actually saying a word of dialogue. And there are so many locations to explore with such contrast in their themes. Light is a more important feature now. Certain creatures fear light, but mostly you'll use it to mark where you've been, and they stay lit. Conceptually, this mechanic is so interesting, not just for its practical purposes, but as I moved through the land, I found myself wanting to light up the dark, as if my light was cleansing the world from its curse. There's a handful of other big changes. You can now teleport right from the start to any bonfire that you've lit. I'm not completely sold on this idea. Having to walk between zones in Dark Souls 1 reinforced the clever way that world jigsawed together. Sadly, some of that is lost with 2, even though the level design is just as clever. Another big change is that now if you kill an enemy a fairly large amount of times, they won't respawn when you go to the bonfire. This is a fundamental tweak to the Souls system, and my first reaction was panic, but actually, it's great. Not only does this stop soul farming, which isn't very practical anyway, but it also means if you're struggling in a boss fight, eventually the path to the boss clears up a bit. This speeds things up without removing too much challenge. But to offset this, now each time you die, your maximum health will actually lower until it reaches a threshold at about halfway, and the only way you can restore this is with a human effigy, which are in limited supply. But this is also great because not only does it make death more stressful, but it also adds a physical loss to a finite resource with every fall. If I had one major criticism, I'd say that poison is a little overused and at times feels cheap. But this is Dark Souls. It pretty much has a blank check when it comes to punishment. You signed up for this the moment you press start. One welcome improvement is how you can respec your character if you find a particular rare item. And this is great if you find a weapon later in the game that you love but can't use really because you've already committed levels in another direction. A common complaint in the last games. And there's so much gear now and more freedom with weapon augments, and there's heaps of shields with different stats. And I find the more that you play with gear and the more things you switch up, the more fun it is. Especially with rings, now you have 4 slots and there are some amazing rings that all affect strategy. The old sun ring is my favourite. Take too much damage and it unleashes a fiery burst around you. That has saved my butt more than once. I think you could say that ring's a bit overpowered, but it doesn't really mean anything when you meet a boss like this. He makes the Capra demon from the last game feel like he belongs in Fable 3. So the big question is Dark Souls 2 harder than the other games? I think that's a matter of perspective. I'd say yes, it is harder in parts. It certainly has a better tutorial and opening section, which helps with the learning controls. But that helps you for about 10 minutes. If you have played through the other games, then I think you'll probably beat many of these bosses first go. The good news is, there are heaps of them, and they all have unique and interesting mechanics. And each enemy in this game is animated so gracefully. It's beautiful creature work. But you're still likely to meet enemies that feel impossible at first. And there are many times where you'll be in a pit of despair, not knowing where to go, what lies behind the next fog wall, what half of the stuff in your inventory is even for. And that's the beauty of the Souls design, confusion. This all makes you a cautious player, a hoarder, and also appreciate that everything is finite. Sadly, the servers weren't live at the time of review, so we couldn't test out any of the online covenants or do any co-op or PvP, and that's a huge part of the game. But it certainly seems to have a larger focus, and that's a good thing. I think the hardest thing for newcomers to the Souls series is thinking of death as punishment or loss. But it's not that at all. Death brings this game to life. It makes the person behind the controller stronger, not the character you're playing. I know this game isn't for everyone, but I kind of want everyone to play it just a little bit, because in a time where games are getting easier and holding your hand all the way to the very end, Dark Souls 2 is holding its ground, saying no, no, not today, you need to earn it. I'm giving Dark Souls 2 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens. All right, let's do this.
One of my all-time favorite RPG series is The Elder Scrolls, so when I heard that Bethesda's Pete Hines was in town, I just had to catch up with him for a chat. Well, hello Pete, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
One thing that I would say is quite common with Bethesda games is that there's often a lot of freedom and player choice and that kind of thing, and consequence of action. Why do you think we don't see more of that in games in general?
I think it's something that that you're starting to see creep into more and more games. When we first put Morrowind out on the Xbox, I remember a lot of people saying that's never going to work on the Xbox because console gamers don't get that kind of game. Like, that's not what they're used to. That's a PC title. And we felt like, you know what, cool is cool and good is good, and if it's a good game, it'll find an audience. I think that was a big watershed moment for Bethesda in realizing that there are different types of gamers on every platform.
Speak freely, friend.
And I think you've seen the industry over the years continue to evolve its thinking, you know, whether it's a game like the Walking Dead stuff that Telltale did, and sort of tracking your choices along the way and even telling you how your choices compared to other people.
I reckon you didn't do it then.
It's not just your story that I'm playing, but it's the one that I'm telling by what it is I do in the game. I think that's what people love about Skyrim and Fallout 3, and yeah, we love to continue to try and inject those things into our games.
Well, let's talk about The Elder Scrolls Online. What prompted the decision to take this universe into the MMO space?
You know, in all the time I've worked on the Elder Scrolls series, the #1 most requested thing was always, this is great, but I'd love to be able to play with my friends. And the difficult part is really that things that you have come to take for granted in a game like Skyrim or Oblivion just aren't possible in an online game, where you're not going to be able to interact with every object in the world. If you have everybody in the game interacting with every object in the world, it's just chaos, like wheels of cheese rolling down hills by the thousands and breaking the game. So we had to sort of figure out the balance of making it interactive enough that it felt like an Elder Scrolls game, but still allowing for what MMOs can or can't have when you have thousands and thousands of people playing together at the same time.
Now, what's your reaction to when games like Skyrim become so embedded in our culture, with memes like arrow to the knee and the Fusra Da being so popular?
It's pretty amazing to be a part of.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
To see that many people talking about it, to see it showing up on TV talk shows and people recording new songs as homages, and it's in comics and all these places. It's a little surreal.
I can't believe it. You're Dragonborn.
Makes me proud when I see lots of people talking about it. I mean, ultimately, it's a testament to the game and how good the game is and how much people have enjoyed it. To see where Bethesda was when I started in '99, where it was a small group of folks working with Todd Howard on Morrowind in its infancy, and you know, we had just put out a bowling game and we had a drag racing game and a few other things. We were heavily PC focused, didn't have anything on the console. I was the only PR marketing person there, so I was technically the director of myself. And to go from that to where we are now, it is something that I actually try and find time to stop and reflect back on. It's been an unbelievable amount of work, but it's a group of people that I love working with. I love what we do and what we stand for, and you know, I still really look forward to coming to work every day, and that's pretty cool after this much time at one place.
Time to head to a town with friendly faces everywhere and humble folks without temptation. We're going down to South Park, the Stick of Truth.
Put that woman in restraint! Oh, there you are, Doctor! That's called a
South Park, the Stick of Truth is a turn-based RPG that feels like it puts you inside an episode of South Park. In fact, the moment you step into this game, It's a bit of a surreal experience. It's like you're stepping into a South Park simulator. Now, I'm a massive South Park fan, but Hex, you not so much.
Yeah, I used to watch it a lot back in the day, but it just got a bit too gross for my tastes. That said, I went into this as an unbiased game critic, so let's get started. First things first, you get to create your character. But I was a bit upset that I couldn't make a South Park version of me. There's no option to make a girl character.
Yes, well, you can kind of make it look like you. It would still be a boy underneath in a wig, though.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Or if you can afford the plastic surgery, David Hasselhoff.
Oh. Here we go.
Oh, that looks nice. Big improvement.
I think they've done this though because the story really does rely on the fact that you're a young boy, and those childhood politics of boys versus girls is something you just can't mess with.
Especially in South Park.
The 412th meeting of the girls is hereby called to order. Sparkle, sparkle. Sunshine! Sunshine, sparkle.
You're the new kid in town with a convenient case of amnesia.
He doesn't remember.
He doesn't remember at all.
That's good he doesn't remember.
And silent protagonist syndrome.
What's your name? He doesn't talk, Elf King. He thinks he's hot shit or something.
But you've arrived in the middle of a war between Stan and Kyle's elves and Cartman's humans as they fight for control of the coveted stick of truth. Cartman wastes no time in recruiting you into his humans and letting you pick a class and name.
We welcome to our kingdom, Douchebag the Fighter. Hooray!
Then you're free to explore the town and do quests at your own pace. It's a fairly small map that you can just walk across in a few minutes, but it's very easy to get distracted. It's a museum of references. Everywhere you look, there's a nod to an old episode or character.
I am Damien, the Antichrist, the son of Satan, and I have never witnessed a thing as hideous and vile as the one you mortals call Rob Schneider.
Plus, it's great to finally see how the town is laid out. And there's so much to do. Before I even turned in my main quest, I'd already thwarted a Mongolian invasion.
Oh, hello, Mongolian!
Started the hunt for Man-Bear Pig.
I believe we are dealing with Man-Bear Pig!
And found Jesus.
You found me! Tee-hee-hee!
One thing that bugged me though was the lack of any kind of game quest icon. It's annoying to have to constantly check the map to see which building has a quest in it. Just a little sign or an arrow above a door or something would have been nice.
Yeah, that was a bit fiddly. We won't spoil any more of the story by talking about it, but we should point out that it is a fairly linear journey. There's no big branching paths. You'll be offered a few choices along the way, but none of them have any long-lasting consequences, which is a bit of a shame.
If you betray us, we'll tell everyone you're a butthole.
It's a good story, but you'll see almost everything in one playthrough, though.
I found the combat system fun and surprisingly deep.
Watch and be amazed. There once was a maiden from Stoneberry Hollow.
You usually get to have a companion with you, each with their own strengths that make them useful in different situations. You have your main melee and ranged attacks, a few special abilities which cost PP.
Using your ability takes power points, or PP for short. PP. If you have a fucking better name for them, then fucking say it, Clyde! Fucking asshole!
And eventually you'll master magic and the power of the dragon shout.
That was fucking hilarious! Dude, that was fucking awesome! Oh, okay, good job, Sir Douchebag. That was sweet.
It's farts. The dragon shadows farts. For every attack or defense move, there's a small flash where you have to hit a button in order to deal maximum damage or successfully block an attack. And you really have to nail them. If you mess it up, your attack can do as little as 1 point of damage. They take quite a while to master, but I really like this mechanic because it just stops it from being a passive experience.
Yeah, I mean, they're simple, but there's so much variety in the attacks and animations that I never got tired of them.
Let's see how you like dealing with me.
It's also pretty important to use attacks that inflict debuffs on your enemies. A Rochambeau attack, for example, can gross out everyone, causing them to throw up and take a big hit of damage each turn. Add in some attacks that stack bleeding or fire damage, and you can make quick work of tough enemies.
I did find that there were some large sections of the game where a particular combo of moves could win just any fight. For example, I had a ground stomp attack that paralyzed every enemy, and combined with Cartman's Burning Cloud, I could wipe out my foes in one turn.
Kick ass.
So that meant the combat got a little bit tedious for me at times.
Yeah, but it's never long before they force you to change companion, or you'll have to do a fight solo, or they'll just throw a really tough fight your way to make you mix up your tactics.
Go, boy!
While we're speaking of quick wins, let's talk about the summons. By completing side quests for a few characters, you unlock these special attacks, which are instant wins for any battle other than a boss fight.
Yeah, these are great. You can't use them all the time, so they're a bit of a rare treat to behold. I have to say though, Hex, using Mr. Slave to take out a group of Nazi zombie ginger kids was pretty full on.
It's that kind of thing that takes it a little bit too far for me personally. I don't think we can even show that, Bajo. In fact, I don't think we can even recreate that with figurines.
Yes, I think it wouldn't be South Park if they didn't disregard the whole concept of good taste, and you have to go into the game expecting that. It doesn't mean you have to like it, but I think you have to expect it.
I did think it was a bit annoying how even after you've unlocked a summons, if you use it, you have to go back and talk to that character the next day to unlock it again. I mean, that just seems like pointless busy work.
Yeah, it was a bit odd. While we're talking about stuff that can't be shown, there are 8 scenes which have been censored for the Australian and European versions of the game, and they deal with interactive mini-games along the lines of anal probing and some other pretty full-on themes. But instead of having the jokes cut completely, we get this. A crying koala and text describing the scene. I haven't seen the uncensored version, but I actually think this censored joke is pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, the text description and my imagination was enough to get that joke across without me having to play the minigame. Moving back to the combat though, I always love it when there's so many ways to win a fight by using the environment. I mean, it almost adds a little bit of puzzle solving to the fights. It's nothing too tricky, but you always feel clever when you spot the opportunity.
I like the clever integration of social networking with this game. There's lots of little jokes there popping up all the time. I also liked how, as you're walking around this town, all the parents look really bored in their jobs and they're on their phones and they're not really having a good time, and you're having this epic adventure, and it just reminded me what it was like pretending as a kid. There's great weapon and gear variety too, and there's just so many funny weapons and outfits to find. And to add another wrinkle of depth, you also get weapons, strap-ons and equipment patches, which add extra buffs or effects to your gear. Overall though, there is such great humour in this game. I think it's the funniest game I've ever played. It's self-deprecating, and some of the jokes are pure genius.
God damn it. I'm so tired of Nazi zombies. It's so overused.
I just really struggle with this because Matt Stone and Trey Parker's particular brand of humour sometimes can just be so clever, but then other times it's just abhorrent.
That's what I like about it though, you know, it's risky comedy, and when it does hit, it hits so hard that it makes it worthwhile. Nothing is safe or sacred. And to have a game like this, which is voiced and written and made by the show's creators so intimately, is unprecedented.
Day 2. So hungry. I've searched for food, but the only thing I've found are other people's annoying, useless audio logs.
Yeah, I think you really have to hand it to these guys for creating what is possibly the most faithful video game tie-in ever. It looks, sounds, and feels exactly like the show. There are also some solid RPG mechanics, and it's made with a ton of heart and respect for the source material. Even though the humour isn't always to my taste, I'm giving it 7.5.
This game is around 14 hours long, and my only real concern was that maybe it might overstay its welcome, the style of this game and the gameplay mechanics, but it doesn't. It's clever and funny the whole way through. I gave it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens. So did you name the game for this week? It was IHRA Drag Racing, the most realistic drag racing game. Released all the way back at the turn of the millennium. Officially endorsed by the International Hot Rod Association of America, it was developed by Bethesda Softworks, which is a little nod to our Pete Hines interview.
Next week on the show, lightning strikes yet again in Final Fantasy XIII, Lightning Returns.
Only 13 days to go.
Plus, Dave Callan drops by to take us on another JRPG journey with Bravely Default.
If you're a Jeff Minter fan, you might want to catch Spawn Point this weekend over on ABC3 as we'll be checking out his latest creation, TXK.
Until next week, Bajo out.
Hex out.
Did you ask Pete Hines about Fallout 4?
Of course I asked him, but he wouldn't tell me anything. But then I looked deep inside his soul and I thought I saw a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
I was like, Pete Hines, keep breathing if there's going to be a Fallout 4.
And he kept breathing?
He did.